Hi, I'm Alex and this is Tank Tested, and today we'll be setting up an aquarium, but first I want to talk with you about Takashi Amano. Amano was the author of this book and the founder of Aquascaping. There are 2 more books in his collection, but this is the first, and it's the only one that I own. Amano passed away in 2015, but he was a legend in the aquarium hobby. The tanks featured in his book are home to lush, grown-in plants who thrive thanks to the addition of CO2. Adding CO2 to the home-planted aquarium was one of Amano's main contributions to the hobby. Tanks with grown-in plants like this were rare before Amano, but if you're wondering why I've chosen today's video to wax on about Amano, there's a clue in this plant right here. We'll get to what that plant is in just a second, but first I want to show you some of Amano's early work. He kept refining his style for more than 20 years after this book was published. But in these fading pages, you can see the foundation of modern aquascaping. From the plant choices Amano made, to the focus on composition. These books are no longer in print, but they are worth it for the inspiration. And speaking of inspiration, here is that plant again. This is Java Fern. Now, this is wide-leaf Java Fern. It's one of the least demanding plants to grow, and a great plant for beginners. It's a plant that you can comfortably add to an aquarium without worrying that it's going to be too challenging to grow. I was surprised to find that this is the only form of Java Fern in this book, but today we're going to be working with a plant that made many appearances in Amano's later work. This is needle leaf Java Fern. Now when you look at its leaves, they're quite thin and narrow. In fact, they're 2 to 3 times more narrow than traditional Java Fern. And that's really important. This plant is a great tool in the home aquarium because its small size makes your tank look bigger. But this Java Fern is not good enough because this is not Amano's Java Fern. This is Amano's Java Fern, and I mean that literally. This is needle leaf Java Fern propagated from Java Fern in Amano's tanks. So, as close as you can possibly get, this is Amano's Java Fern. And when you compare it to the other needle leaf Java Fern, you can see a pretty incredible difference. Amano's Java Fern is tiny. Maybe it's a 1/4 inch across. Maybe. I know it's hard to visualize, but I've never seen Java Fern quite this small before. I mean, the needle leaf variety is already really tiny. But for now, we're going to focus on Amano's needle leaf Java Fern. So say goodbye to this needle leaf. It's the last we'll be seeing it, at least this episode. For now, we're going to focus on this stuff, which I got from a friend of mine. There's no letter of authenticity that it's from Amano, but we can trace it back with just 2 steps back to Amano, so I feel pretty confident that this is the real deal. Okay, so let's get started with the build. Today I'm going to be using UNS equipment. This is their 16T aquarium. It's a 1.5 gallon aquarium, and I'm using their ONS light, all of which is in the description of this video. This is a pretty small setup, but I'm doing something a little different this time. I'm using a bonsai pot as the base of my design. Rather than filling the aquarium with substrate, all of my substrate will be going in this pot. But there is a little hole in the bottom of it, so I'll be using this little piece of stainless steel mesh to block that hole. Which is important because I don't want aqua soil to fall through that hole. Today I'm going to be using UNS's Contra Soil for my aqua soil. It's a quite fine aqua soil. I think they actually sell it in a couple of different sizes, from like super fine to somewhat coarse, and this is the extra fine version of that. I think they also sell it in both like the light brown and the black, but I think light brown works well for this pot. So now I'll bring in the Java Fern and some lava rock. We're going to be using these little pieces of lava rock to weigh down our Java Fern. And to attach them, we'll be using these rubber bands. Now, in an ideal world, we'd use black rubber bands, but I don't have any. So in a pinch, we're gonna just attach them to the lava rock like this. Now, the goal is to have the rubber bands be tight enough to hold the Java Fern, but not so tight that they squeeze it. So you want a little bit of give. Okay, so attaching the Java Fern to the lava rock is a pretty simple process. At the base of the Java Fern is a rhizome. That's this little bit here. You want to make sure that rhizome is above the surface of the aqua soil. So you just attach the Java Fern to the lava rock. Now right now I'm pinching the leaves, which is not what you want to do. You want to just hold the rhizome in place. So I'm just lowering the rubber band so it's holding the rhizomes. It's not holding it too tight, but it is holding it tight enough that the rhizome will have a chance to attach to the lava rock, and eventually you could remove the rubber band if you want. Alright, so while I tie a couple more pieces of Java Fern to my lava rock, I figure it's a good time to give a little background on Java Fern in general. Java Fern really is the staple of the aquascaping and aquarium hobby because it's so versatile. It's the type of plant that you can use in just about any aquarium. It's slow growing, but it can survive under almost any conditions. Depending on the scale of your aquarium, it can be a foreground plant, a background plant, or a midground plant. And because there are so many different forms of Java Fern, you can actually find plants that grow only a few inches tall and others that grow up to a foot in height, so it's a really versatile plant. The only major pitfall of Java Fern is how slow it grows. You have to be content with your aquarium taking quite a while to become established, but I think that's a reasonable trade-off. The Amano needle-leaf Java Fern is apparently incredibly slow growing, but I have enough for this little pot, so for now, I think this is a nice little colony to start growing. Eventually, maybe I'll build a larger scape, but for now, I'll be happy with this little cluster of Amanos Java Fern. To plant, I just lay my lava rock on the surface of the aqua soil. The goal here is to provide nutrients to the Java Fern without submerging the rhizome, but Java Fern will put out roots, and those roots will get nutrients from the aqua soil. So this aqua soil does have a purpose, but we're not just going to use Java Fern in this setup. I'm also going to be using a little red stem plant called AR Mini. Now AR stands for the scientific name of this plant, but I'm not great at pronouncing Latin. So here is the scientific name on screen, and you tell me how to pronounce it, because I have heard it pronounced a dozen different ways from a dozen different people. I picked it for this setup because I think it's probably the easiest red plant out there. And I think the red of the AR Mini and the green of the Java Fern will complement each other quite nicely. Now all that's left is to add water. And honestly, this is where using the bonsai pot really shines. Normally, you have to be really careful when you fill up an aquarium. The water pouring into the tank can disrupt all of the hard work you've done. But with the pot, you can pour all of the water on the bottom of the aquarium and not worry about disturbing the plants inside. This setup holds about 3 containers of water, and I plan on doing 1 container water change a week. So, adding the light, let's see what we've built. There you go. I'm really pleased with how this looks, going from the turquoise base through the AR Mini and on to the Java Fern. There's just such a wonderful transition of bright colors. I think the tank really stands out. Right now there are some not so healthy leaves on the Java Fern, but I'm not too worried about that. In the next few weeks, I'll probably pinch them off and the plant will be just fine. I just can't get over how elegant and simple this setup looks. It's just so clean. And the nice thing is, I believe it will stay that way. That's because if algae builds up, it's really easy to take this pot out of the aquarium and clean everything, and then add the pot right back in. That's something you could never do with a traditional aquascape. I'm really excited about this elegant and simple way of displaying one of my favorite new additions to my fish room. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and check out some of the other videos I've uploaded recently. And if you really want to support the work I do, consider supporting me on Patreon. Without my Patreon supporters, this channel just couldn't exist.